Good morning. So I'm going to read an article that I think is important for everyone to know about. And so I'm going to record it for posterity. This is a public service announcement. We heard the truth will come out. This so much sounds like the truth to me that we'll leave it at the top of the blog until everyone has had a chance to read it. Gordon ends with the comment that this group may well succeed, but as you and I know, there's not a chance in the world they will succeed. To the many light workers who've unfortunately bought into the group's undermining of President Obama by repeatedly distributing every lie that has ever been concocted, my message is, please stop. To those who held the faith, thank you. The Obama unpresidency. Gordon Duff, New Eastern Outlook, April 30th, 2014. Veterans Today link, Journal Neo.org link. During the last months of the Bush administration, a secret shadow government known as SSG was created to sabotage President Obama politically, economically, and in particular on issues of foreign policy. Transition conferences were held, procedures enacted, roadblocks created in every aspect of government. Parallel command structures answerable to former officials and special interest groups were created. Special interest groups, keep that in mind. In many departments, such as those tasked with enforcing laws, regulating financial institutions, or even commanding nuclear forces, new positions were created, giving not only broad and unaccountable authority to minor officials, but new regulations protect them from oversight or even detection. In some cases, State Department officials overseeing intelligence and policy functions report not to Secretary of State Kerry, but to private think tanks, many tied to extremist elements of the opposition party. Extremist elements of the opposition party. Keep that in mind. SSG moles forge language on intercepts, distribute misleading analysis, and Photoshop evidence, and those recently have altered translated statements from the Russian government over the Ukraine to be full-scale ultimatums where in reality, such language has never been used. In the worst cases, drug and human trafficking and even terrorism is involved. In one case, the Army psychiatrist Dr. Hassan, responsible for the mass killings at the Army Fort Hood facility, not only took part in a transitional conference at George Washington University, but consorted with known terrorists while under the protection of powerful political friends in the Bush administration. Powerful political friends in the Bush administration. Remember that. The unpresidency of Barack Obama. If Obama administration policies make no sense, and to any moderately informed observer, that has to have come to mind. There is a reason. When Obama took office, the previous administration, the most corrupt and even demonic in history, had embedded its most venomous acolytes into key strategic positions. The most visible historic carryover from the Bush administration has been tied to the extensive privatization of intelligence functions necessary to maintain the flow of tons of heroin from Afghanistan and to maintain the testy relationships with the Mexican and Latin American drug cartels. The rationale for not letting go of power, for failing to hand over the reins, as it were, is ostensibly financial in nature. Imagine that. With control of events through the control of intelligence, and as the JSOC, or the Joint Special Operations Command, the quasi-political privatized Black Ops group, believed to still be commanded by Cheney and Rumsfeld though out of government, Full military operational capabilities have survived where leaving public office should have brought to an end. Where the carryover has surfaced in an undeniable and most threatening fashion is with America's nuclear forces. In 2007, nuclear weapons were illegally loaded onto a B-52 at Minot Air Force Base in South Dakota. The command of the nuclear base and its missile wings, perhaps the most powerful offensive force on Earth, had fallen to a religious cult dedicated to bringing about a nuclear apocalypse. Sounds like a movie. In one of the rare successes of the Obama administration, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, has, in a series of lightning strikes, removed the entire nuclear command of the U.S. Air Force. Similarly, General Dempsey has removed dozens of ranking military officers and Pentagon officials revealed to be answerable to the SSG. The moves against America. Obama inherited a government infected by the secret societies John F. Kennedy warned about only hours before his assassination, using names of their own choosing: Illuminati, Federalists, Freemasons, Demonists, Evangelical Zionists, Temple of Set, Neocon. A virtual army of moles were planted at every strategic juncture in America's bureaucratic and judicial apparatus. Wow. Moles. A virtual army of moles were planted at every strategic juncture in American bureaucratic and judicial apparatus. Through control of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, over $3 trillion was created without authorization or underwriting through Treasury notes and distributed into a network of European banks through Bank of America and Royal Bank of Scotland. In a single act, Timothy Geithner misappropriated more funds than anyone in world history. The 5-4 majority in the Supreme Court not only legally underwrote the overthrow of the American electoral system in 2000 with the appointment of George Bush, but certified through its silence the suspension of habeas corpus encompassing all guaranteed rights of individual due process. In 2005, authorized blanket wiretapping, torture, defendants' rights, and legalized execution by drone without due process. In recent years, all electoral financing controls guaranteeing constitutional equal protection were overturned. You gotta get that. In recent years, all electoral financing controls guaranteeing constitutional equal protection were overturned. 3. Through the process known as gerrymandering, electoral districts were reappointed to guarantee that over 200 million Americans would be denied congressional representation, eliminating entirely their real voting franchise. 4. Through blocking Obama judicial nominees and control of all regional Department of Justice officials, the FBI, with few exceptions, unprecedented criminality has been able to flourish throughout America. On issues of 9/11 alone, dozens of prosecutions, investigations, and civil actions that easily exceed prima facie requirements were squashed. In a real planned and coordinated multi-generational operation, including talent spotting at the earliest education levels, a virtual army of semi-robotic automatons were injected into the American legal system, ensuring decades of abuse and injustice. Through control of service academies, extremist groups tied to bizarre religious sects, many deeply rooted in satanic practices, key areas within the military and intelligence communities fell under control of secret societies. For those who really understand the Washington dynamic, the real disappointment has been Obama's unwillingness to remove not just obstructionist bureaucrats that sabotage policies and keep billions in public funds flowing directly to Bush, run organized crime, but the even greater threats such as we have seen during recent weeks. The Ukraine crash. By this time, one thing is clear. Whatever legacy the Obama presidency wished to have has been destroyed by the debacle in the Ukraine. The gaffes are mounting up, the most recent one today, where the New York Times was forced to withdraw the article accusing Russia of sending special operations forces into the eastern Ukraine. They had snatched photos from the internet social media, did some doctoring, and were within hours caught fabricating another story. Similarly, the Anti-Defamation League, a New York-based lobby group closely tied to the New York Times, had only a week before been busted for orchestrating the anti-Semitic pamphlets passed out to the Ukraine Jews. It goes further. More than phony news stories, down to training terrorists, planning attacks, and murdering demonstrators. Noodleman. Vicky Noodleman, or as she is known, Under Secretary of State Victoria Nuland, was never a particularly noteworthy or capable individual. Her primary skills were her willingness to marry aristocratic fanatic John Kagan and then to accept a position working for Dick Cheney, the infamous Death Vader of American politics. Noodleman wasn't always the jolly cow you see today. Yes, jowly cow you see today. By Washington standards, she was a hot babe. Her marriage to John Kagan, the intellectually shallow head of the anti-Putin cabal and Brookings Institution, assured her a quick run the pecking order through the pecking order at the State Department, even under the flawed oversight of Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Clinton, were she paying attention, would have strangled Noodleman at birth, as the proverbial saying goes, before damage could be done. That's loopers, oh my gosh. It was Noodleman that supplied the talking points to Undersecretary of State Susan Rice during the Benghazi investigation, a political disaster for Clinton. Little did the half-blind Obama administration know that the Benghazi attack had been planned and underwritten in Washington. The Potomac Institute, PJ Media, a Mossad front group, the Heritage Foundation, the American Enterprise Institute, and carry-over operational units formerly under command of former Vice President Cheney, as with recent investigations that have traced the training of the Maiden Square snipers to secret CIA facilities in Poland, Benghazi was also a CIA operation. Few care to remember that Reverend Terry Jones of the Koran burning fame, in another life spent 12 years in Germany running Gladio operations. Erased from history but brought back for this brief moment in a news story from that day. Washington, September 12th, Reuters. General Martin Dempsey, the chairman of the U.S. Military Joint Chiefs of Staff, spoke with Pastor Terry Jones by phone on Wednesday and asked him to withdraw his support for a film whose portrayal of the Prophet Muhammad has sparked violent protests, including one that ended with the death of America's envoy to Libya. That was the official original news message. When backtracking, the funding of the Jones film created by General Dempsey for inciting what we now know to be the cover and deception operation leading to the Benghazi attack, the names Kagan and Noodleman, are seen repeatedly along with the front of the broadcast. With the front of the broadcast. Wow, they were advertising themselves. PJ Media and a series of conservative think tanks. Ooh, gross. Thus, Washington stink tanks, as they are called, assisted by a YouTube PSYOP media company and coordinated with corrupt elected officials, murdered an American ambassador and used SSG insiders in the State Department to push blame onto the Obama administration. The same method is being repeated in Syria and Ukraine, with the Palestine peace talks in addition to the sabotage relationships with both Russia and China. No one would believe it. There is a clear agenda, one intended to burn Russia and China and the United States to the ground, inside Washington and other capitals around the world. SSG moles working in concert are pushing the world to August 1914. Why they may well succeed is simple. No one would believe it. Gordon Duff is a Marine combat veteran of the Vietnam War that has worked on veterans and POW issues for decades and consulted with governments challenged by security issues. Here's a senior editor and chairman of the board of Veterans Today, especially for the online magazine New Eastern Outlook. And to that, I'd like to say, until we all get together and really start holding all these people accountable and digging and finding out the truth, we are aiding and abetting this big SSG ship of usurped moles that have taken over our country and our territory and our laws and our jail systems and our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. And I think it's time for the people to stand and protect each other, our brothers and sisters, and come forward and make a stand that we're not going to take it anymore. Thanks for listening.